Hi, this is David Mastio, California editor for the Center Square, and this is California in Focus. As always, I'm joined by Kenneth Schrupp, a California reporter for the Center Square. Today we're talking about Gavin Newsom's budget proposal. The governor argues that we're getting the size of the budget deficit wrong. What's his argument?
Yeah, that's right, David. We have the governor saying that we only have a $38 billion deficit, while the Legislative Analyst Office, which is this nonpartisan government agency that has to give estimates and assessments of the state's finances, projects a $68 billion budget deficit for the 24-25 fiscal year. The main difference is in optimism about revenue. The LAO's estimates on this include a range of revenue projections, and the governor chose to use the most optimistic projection instead of the more realistic middle range projection. So that accounts for maybe half of the difference. The other half of the difference is from the governor not taking into consideration Prop 98 spending. Prop 98 is just constitutionally mandated education spending. He's assuming that he can cut Prop 98 spending by about $15 billion, but that will require legislative action, and that number should not have been considered in just the initial deficit report.
How much does the governor propose cutting?
He's proposing cutting about $8.5 billion in spending against the $37.8 billion deficit, so clearly that's not going to be enough.
To fill in even the smaller budget gap that he says there is. What kind of cuts are there in that budget cut? What is the target?
There's about $1 billion in public transit cuts and infrastructure cuts. There's going to be some minor reductions in environmental spending relating to clean energy. It's just bits and dollars saved here and there. Keep in mind that he is still proposing a $292 billion state budget, so this is just pennies that he's taking off the top.
How will the rest of the deficit be filled in?
About half of it will be from just withdrawing money from our reserves. We've got about low 30 billion something in reserves. We're going to withdraw about half of that to just pay for some of our operations. The other half is going to come from some accounting gimmicks. You know, you can move money between accounts and take money from other special funds. What you can do is allow some of your agencies to take loans out at very low interest rates based on the budgets and money they're expected to get next year. Or you can decide not to give them that money and just essentially back a loan, allowing them to get the money from somewhere else. These are all creative accounting gimmicks, but most of this is just one-time operations. This isn't sustainable.
So we'll only be able to withdraw from the reserve fund for a second year and then it'll be gone.
Yes. I really don't understand how this is happening, but Newsom is saying that at the same time that we're taking out half of the funds from the reserves, that we're also going to be adding $3 billion to the reserves.
Was education spared from any cuts?
Education was largely spared from cuts. Per pupil spending is only down $9 from last year, despite the huge drop in revenue. Newsom proposed $23,519 per pupil in what's called TK through 16. This includes students everywhere from the newly created transitional kindergarten grade before kindergarten to 4 years of college education.
What are Republicans saying about Governor Newsom's approach to the budget?
As can be expected, it's just too little, too late. They don't think that the cuts are deep enough to change the structural problems in California's tax system. But there's one thing that they do agree on the governor with, which is that the current requirement that the state spend 90% of any surplus it has, while only being able to save 10%, is deeply damaging to the state's ability to save up money for rainy day situations like this.
What's the next step for the budget?
We have months of negotiations coming up between the legislature and the governor. We do have a Democratic trifecta, so it's going to be about allocating spending for intra-party priorities. Understandably, a lot of the environmental faction, the Democratic Party, was very upset with the governor's desire to cut some environmental priority spending, such as clean energy projects. So we're likely going to see some of that spending increase. This $292 billion proposal will probably end up being a little bit higher than that.
I'm David Mastio with the Center Square, and we've been talking with Kenneth Schrupp, California reporter for the Center Square. You can read his work at thecentersquare.com. Thank you for listening to California in Focus, and please subscribe to our podcast.
Learn from creative experts. At Skillshare, classes are taught by industry leaders excited to share their tools, techniques, and professional journeys with you. Follow the link in our show description to join Skillshare today and get 1 month free.